Uncle Mark,
Yes.
in this time of crisis and virus, one would think that
Virus crisis.
Exactly. We'd be sitting in front of a single candle with a can of cream corn. But, I'm getting plump. I am not eating... I'm eating very well.
Well, that's A, gross and bourgeois, and B, there should probably be some rules about how and what you eat, Doug.
Yes. Desperate
Dan,
for some
do
rules.
you have any rules to impart to Uncle Doug?
No.
Yeah, good.
More crab legs.
Listen, there may be some rules. I think we can talk about them. But before we do, I just want to say this, which is Webster's Dictionary defines the word religion as a system of faith and worship designed to provide adherents with a belief structure and practices that will make them look silly and possibly crazy to outsiders, but keep them psychologically trapped forever.
Mission accomplished.
Direct quote. That was copied and pasted.
Nice.
One of the ways that religions exert control over the lives of their believers is through controlling what they eat and drink. Listeners may remember 2 weeks ago when Uncle Mark talked to cult expert Stephen Hassan.
Yeah.
Hassan. Stephen Hassan about how cults and religions are so effective at trapping people's brains. How is your cult coming along, by the way, Uncle Mark? Have you decided on a name yet?
Never better. Never better, thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
Keep it up. It's always good to have a side hustle.
My side hustle right now is I'm struggling with a cat who wants to eat the microphone, so you guys keep talking.
Okay. Well, listen. What stood out to me in Mark's interview was the idea that if you can get a person to change their behavior, their brains will twist themselves in knots trying to justify having acted so strangely.
Right.
It seemed like, to a large extent, the key to getting people to believe whatever you want them to believe was to make them behave in a specific way. Almost doesn't matter what the behavior is as long as it's new and different. So, this new and different behavior creates an us versus them mentality. We, the in-group, are the righteous few who are brave enough to always wear mismatching socks, as our deity commands. They, the out-group, match their socks like filthy little heathens, blah, blah, blah. So, the pitch becomes actually quite easy, which is basically something along the line of, look, you don't have to decide right now if this is true for you or not. Just join us for a few meetings, hear what our charismatic leader has to say, and, it's no big deal, but try mismatching your socks for the next little while. See what that does for you. We'll explain why in session 6. Well, if you make it to session 6, you've been doing the sock thing the whole time. Congratulations! Without even knowing it, you've joined a cult. Call your dad. This trick of making your brain justify your behavior after the fact is a goofy little quirk of human psychology, but it's super effective. And pretty much every effective cult/religious leader figures it out pretty early on. Today, gentlemen, I'm going to talk about one way that religions have created in-group versus out-group mentalities for thousands of years. Boggle tournaments.
Yes.
No. I'm talking about aliment, comestibles, the act of gustation. In the modern vernacular, I am, of course, referring to boggle tournaments. No! Food! Now, we three... gentlemen, grew up in Mormonism, which experimented quite heavily with otherizing behaviors pretty early on. Plural marriage, strange temple rituals cribbed from the Masonic rituals, but whatever. Funny magic underwear, killing apostates, shitting on the darker races, fighting wars against entire states and even the USA. All of these were... And some still are ways that Mormonism differentiated itself from the rest of the world.
Yeah, it's pretty different stuff.
Yeah, I mean, but when you boil it down, the basics of it isn't different. You know what I mean? There's almost nothing to really differentiate it from mainstream Christianity except just a couple of weirdo things, right?
Yeah.
So... even after almost 200 years of chilling the fuck out and trying not to be such major weirdos, Mormons have still have their markers that show them and the world that they are special. The biggest one is their word of wisdom. This is the Mormon rule book of food and drink, and famously includes a prohibition on alcohol, hot drinks, and joy. For more on this, you can check episode 66 and learn all about the word of wisdom.
The word to wisdom.
So, we know what it is. You two and I, know what it is to see people eating and drinking perfectly normal things and to know that they are bad, evil people. But Mormons are actually pretty late to the food rules game, and I thought we should talk a bit about some of the other major players. So, interestingly, a lot of the rules that religions developed happened not just to differentiate one group from another, but to show who was important within that group. We all know the rules. We all know about the rules in Jewish kosher eating, for instance. No digging on swine, no mixing meat and dairy, shellfish is ucky, and of course, normal healthy digestion is strictly forbidden.
Right.
But why did these rules develop? I've seen a lot of theories about it. Some Bronze Age Hebrew got sick off a bad oyster and an overzealous rabbi banned it for everyone. Or maybe some king along the way hated pork and everybody else obliged for long enough that it just became their identity as a group. But I'm really interested in another theory, which looks at cleanness versus uncleanness, sort of pollution versus purity of food, which has nothing to do with what is or isn't healthy to eat. As a matter of fact, there's almost no way of determining why the ancients designated one food as polluted and another as delightsome. This, of course, is more just about it's more about just making sure that things are good. Some things are good and some are bad. So yes, of course you can eat a quail, but obviously you can't eat an owl. Squirrel, probably. Weasel, no. The rules are not about the food itself. It's just about having rules. And the really fun part is that the rules applied differently depending on who you were. So ancient Hebrews had what amounted to a caste system. People had higher or lower social rank based entirely on heredity. The family that you were born into determined everything. So the highest class, the priest class, had the most rules imposed on it, but also had some pretty sweet perks. Namely, the best stuff, meaning the good calf or the, quote, first fruits of the trees, were supposed to be sacrificed to God, which is all well and good, but, God never really showed up to take the stuff. So, we're just going to take this back into our priest tent and, don't you worry your pretty little head about what happens to it.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, we talked about that in Leviticus, right? It's like, all the finest animals were sacrificed, and then you just kind of leave it there at the temple. Don't worry, we'll take care of it.
We'll clean up. Don't worry.
Yeah.
You guys go ahead. God is pleased with you. Here's a little button and a gold star.
You're good to go.
Of course, when you start using weirdo food laws as part of your religious identity, there's always the potential for things to get weirder. Sure, the Torah has plenty of very specific rules about what you can and can't eat. See Uncle Doug's rundown and way back in episode 9 for more. But through the centuries, the Jewish rules have only gotten more intense, rather. Around the 1st century CE, they started adding rules. Now, not only were there only certain animals that could be eaten, but they had to be slaughtered in very specific ways that aren't mentioned in the Bible. That was all new. Celebrations and holidays started developing specific food and drink traditions, which eventually became more and more like laws. What to eat and drink at Passover, or how a wedding feast was meant to go, etc., etc. Of course, this isn't just a Jewish or a Mormon thing. Lots of religions control what their adherents chow on. Islam drew heavily on Mosaic law when it came to what Muslims were to eat. Things like no pork, nothing with blood in it, no roadkill. But Muhammad needed to separate his Middle Eastern Abrahamic religion from the other ones. So he banned alcohol, which Jews and Christians relied on heavily for their rituals and for, getting bombed out of their skulls.
Getting through the day.
Right?
Yeah.
Just dealing with the shit.
Yeah.
Hindus made rules too. They famously decided somewhere along the way that cows are sacred and that it's a sin to even attempt to keep them out of busy traffic, let alone to eat them. They too used, and probably still use, food as a marker of purity and social status. The caste system, their caste system included very strict rules, not only about who could eat what, but even who could prepare what for whom. So members of the Brahmin caste, which is, again, the priest class, because religion is about power, not holiness, couldn't eat food that had been cooked by someone of a lower caste. A drinking well could be considered polluted forever if someone from a low caste had ever even drawn water from it.
Wow. We've never really done. We need to do the whole caste system as a segment, don't we? Because we've never really.
It's a kettle of fish, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So the highest caste, these Brahmins, their food was to be prepared in the finest way, called paka, while the people of lower castes got inferior food, which, I shit you not, is referred to as kaka.
Lovely.
Because sometimes the gods just favor 12-year-old Dan instead of 42-year-old Dan. There's a whole system of prestige surrounding who will eat what from whom. Giving food to someone else meant that you were ranked higher than whoever was receiving. Refusing food from someone is a great way to tell them that you think you're higher on the chain than they are. All of this amounts to a fantastic way to discourage house guests and not have your Netflix binge interrupted. Different forms of Buddhists have developed different rules. Native American tribes have all had various fascinating pre- and proscriptions about food. African traditional religions, island superstitions, Jim Jones, David Koresh, they all used food as a way of getting their followers to feel special or different. And that difference locked their brains into beliefs, and that's how you win. So, to this day, it's funny because when you hear a lot of people talk about their diet, even if it's not a religious prescription, I think it starts to sound religious awful quick.
For sure.
Like a vegan or a paleo or a keto or a South Beach. We know who you people are.
Yeah, exactly. I eat based on my blood type, blah, blah, blah. It becomes this thing of I've converted to something.
I personally am on the Henry VIII diet right now. And
there's so many turkey leg bones all over the house. It's crazy.
The number of pot pies is outrageous.
Well, and I don't know if you're going to get to this, Dan, but another part of the whole control around food and behavior modification and everything, of course, is no food at all. Right? Is fasting.
Right. That's absolutely the case, yeah.
Yeah, and Mormons have, I think they've done 2 or 3 big fasts so far to stop the coronavirus, so I'm hopeful the third one's going to work.
Well, clearly it works because the curve is flattening, so there you go. And Uncle Doug is fattening. No, I mean, fasting is an interesting thing. That also has happened in many different traditions. There are certain Native American tribes that used to start their children on fasts really early on, like 1 to 2 day fasts, to build them up to a full week during which they would be visited by some spirit animal or spirit guide, which if you've been fasting for a week, guess what? Something crazy is going to visit you.
Oh, if I don't eat lunch by 1:30, everybody looks like a fucking turkey leg to me. So I understand the hunger hallucinations completely. Yeah. And then, of course, there's Ramadan, right? Which is a long-term intermittent fast, which I don't know how the fuck anybody can pull off. That's crazy to me. No food or water
till sundown.
Yeah, during the daylight hours. So that's
You know that it's a true fact that many Muslims gain weight during Ramadan.
because they
Really?
binge so much after dark.
The binges are so intense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then they go straight to bed as opposed to like eating and working off those calories. I'm sure their body goes into some crazy mode.
I was working with a guy, an active Muslim guy on a movie years ago during Ramadan, and it was so miserable. He was a nice guy, but he was such an asshole during the day. Just because we'd all go to lunch, and he just either wouldn't go or he'd sit there and watch us eat, and torture. That's devotion, I suppose. I didn't ever see him break it. So.
Well, and that's the kind of thing we're talking about, right? He's sitting there torturing himself, and far from that making him less likely to want to be a Muslim, it solidifies his identity as that thing and makes it so that he is even more sort of deeply embedded into it.
Yeah,
in his
it
own brain.
gave him a very powerful identity in the group, right? Like
Exactly.
It was very clear what he was doing, and that this was a very devotional thing. And so, yeah, fasting's a whole other part of that, the control mechanism.
Yep. Eating, not eating, weird stuff, whatever it is, it's all there to make sure that your brain is permanently locked in a belief system that doesn't make any sense.
And that's why I am starting the Church of Spam.
Yes, indeed.
Right.
I think the Monty Python guys beat you to it, but
Yeah, I'll write him a letter.
yeah, work with them.
All right,
Anyway,
cool.
that's it. That's all I got. So for that, I just wanted to sort of talk about the concept because I thought, the whole. I really was fascinated by your interview with Stephen Hassan and just thought, oh yeah, this all makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, he's a brilliant guy, and like you were saying about the paleo and everything, he definitely kind of lists those as cult-like behaviors, like CrossFit and not I'm sure we have plenty of people who eat paleo listening to the show and are in CrossFit. I'm not saying you're necessarily in a cult, but just take a minute and look around. That's all I'm saying.
Well, what's that joke?
if-
A Scientologist, a Mormon, and a CrossFit person all walked into a bar. I know because they all told me right away.
Right. Yeah.
Except the Mormon. All right, cool. With that, let's move on.